In this article, we're going to look at scales and arpeggios for aspiring fiction writers. And the term scales and arpeggios is used as a learning metaphor here. We're not actually going to learn scales and arpeggios on a musical instrument. Before we get started, if you want to get an email with a time-stamped overview every time I release a new video like this, then head over to my website at deliberate-practice.com and sign up for my email list. There's other content on the website, plus in the weeks and months to come, I'm going to create some email subscriber only content as a thank you for signing up. That's not in place yet, but it will be in place in the coming weeks and months. So let's start with a student I had who had a problem. Said student is an aspiring fiction writer, but she's an adult. That will make sense more in a moment. She has some story ideas, but she's struggling with actually putting fictional words on the page. And when I got to the bottom of this totally sideswiped me and revealed a blind spot that I'd no idea I had it because it was a blind spot. And it was a symptom of a cognitive bias called the curse of knowledge. And the curse of knowledge is a bias where someone who is knowledgeable about a topic has difficulty communicating with or understanding the perspective of someone who lacks that knowledge. And this creates a communication gap where the knowledgeable person fails to effectively teach, explain, or connect with their audience and students because they can't mentally step back to a state of not knowing what they now know. Now, the reason this sideswiped me is because I've done a lot of music teaching over the last 15 years, and I've always been able to sidestep the curse of knowledge and always put myself in the shoes of a beginner and go and remember what I was like as a beginner, and sidestep this problem. And so when this cropped up and it was made obvious, it really threw me for six for a while. I had to really think about why I'd missed this, and once I was aware of it, it was glaringly obvious, and make sure that I don't miss it with other facets of writing and teaching writing. And the reason I think I missed it, and I'm going to just give you a quick potted history of how I started out. So I taught myself to type aged about 12 or 13, something like that. And this was on a manual typewriter, which dates me and tells you how old I am. I won't tell you how old I am because I'm in denial about that age. I was initially inspired by, and the typing came from this, inspired by a collection of short stories, and they were his first published stories by Isaac Asimov. And each of the stories had autobiographical introductions. And in them, he made certain statements that a writer wrote on a typewriter. This is what a writer did, and blah, 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 blah. And being age 12 or 13, I didn't have the qualitative filters to realize that this was how one person wrote. I read what he wrote, and being at an impressionable age, I thought that was how all writers wrote, and he was telling how it was for every writer. And also, I assumed you just started writing at the beginning and wrote to the end. It never occurred to me that the first fictional words might be overwhelming for aspiring fiction writers who are adults, because when I started out, I was 12, 13, as I said, and I just wrote cheesy pastiches of all the stuff that I liked. So that was kind of Asimov style science fiction. I really liked at that age the Doc Smith Lensman stories, so there was pastiches of that. I liked Edgar Rice Burroughs and his John Carter stories, and Robert E. Howard and Conan, so I wrote some stories like that as well. So I was writing science fiction and fantasy, and it never occurred to me that I just thought, oh, you just start and you put your paper load it into the typewriter and start writing and blah, 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 and write till the end. So I wrote quite a few stories like that, which got me through the problem of trying to create fictional words and put them on a page. But for someone who's not at that place where they're an adult, the thought of trying to create 3,000 words of fictional words out of nothing, which is what we do, can be really overwhelming. So I had a long think about it and started devising some exercises that would help my student and any aspiring fiction writers who are suffering from the same issue. And obviously, I've called them scales and arpeggios, the musical term. Now, I've been teaching music online since 2008, and I've been using deliberate practice and looking at learning models. And the classical music model is a great learning model that you can learn from you can use in lots of disciplines as a foundation for how you're going to teach or learn something. Essentially, what you have is you have technical exercises. This is the student gets these technical exercises, which are scales and arpeggios usually, although not always. But I didn't want to go into the detail of how the different exercises aren't scales or they aren't arpeggios. Everyone's familiar with the concept of scales and arpeggios, so we'll leave that learning metaphor as it is. And the student learns those, and then there's a practice piece that often was specifically composed to ensure that the student has learned that material. And then if the student has, the cycle repeats with new exercises that are slightly harder, exercise different facets or different skills. So you might start out, so if we think of classical piano, the first exercises might just start out with you learning how to make notes with just the different fingers of your right hand, and you might just do nothing with the left hand. Then you'll switch to the left hand, but then what you might start doing is doing, say, 4 or 5 fingers of the right hand, and then shifting the right hand to move up the piano keyboard using a technique called thumb under. That's the kind of thing. And the beauty of the model is it's been honed and road tested for 250 years. And in the UK, this model, which is used in the school system primarily, goes from grade 1 to grade 8. And if you've got a good teacher who inspires you, who is good at spotting your errors and saying, right, you've not quite got this right, you need to do this specific exercise and this specific exercise to fix that, and keeps you motivated and keeps you going through, and you put the practice in, over time you cannot fail to get to grade 8, which is quite a high level of classical music, because the system is so good. So I like to find learning models, and the classical music model is a great one. And often the exercises you get are scales and arpeggios, which is why I've used that terminology in this video. So, translating this to getting the first fictional words on the page, what the aspiring fiction writer needs is a series of exercises which are designed to get small chunks of fictional words, i.e. words that the aspiring writer has made up, onto the page. And a chunk can be defined as maybe 150 to 200 words. If you type at 50 words a minute, if you type with one finger, I think one finger typist, like one finger of each hand, can get to 25, 30 words a minute. So you're looking at between 5 and 10 minutes for an exercise. It's the same if you write by hand, maybe 10 minutes. I think 15 to 20 words a minute is a decent average for writing by hand. So these exercises are deliberately designed to be small so that they're not overwhelming. And another concept that I always take on board with any kind of teaching I'm doing, and this came from at one point in my life I was a qualified basketball coach, and was teaching basketball. My then 15-year-old son was really keen on basketball, and by me becoming a coach, it enabled us to go to the gym and have keys to the gym, so he could get extra practice in. But one of my fellow coaches, a guy called Tim, a really cool guy and a great basketball coach and some great basketball stories too, he always said, whatever exercises you devise, you want to practice how you're going to play. Make them as realistic as possible. So after you've done the practice, when you step up to doing the thing in the real world, whether it's music, whether it's sport, whether it's writing, the gap between the practice and the actual doing should be as small as possible. So I came up with an exercise format, and when I say you're given, that's you, the student. You're given a genre-specific character, a setting, and a scene goal. Additionally, a first line is written for you, and there are 4 or 5 multiple possibilities to choose from to write towards, and you just have to take that, look at it, maybe set a timer, give yourself 15 minutes and write. And I've got an example which is set in the thriller genre, which I'll show you in a second, just before I turn the page. The reason why it's important to be genre specific is because if, say, for example, you aspire to be a thriller writer, you probably don't want to be practicing scenes that are romance fiction specific or horror fiction specific. Now, there are overlaps between all the genres, but ideally, if there's 2 or 3 genres or one genre that you want to aim at, your exercises should be geared towards that. So here's an exercise I came up with, which I did myself and I've given to students who are in the writing vault. So you've got a character who's a 32-year-old, don't have my glasses on, I misread that, male bank manager named David. The setting situation, he's alone in the bank's closed, he's doing end of day procedures to close the bank up when he notices the back door alarm isn't working and one of the security cameras is showing a static feed. His overall goal is to complete his closing duties and lock up the bank safely. The first sentence, David stared at the security monitor, his coffee growing cold as static flickered across camera 3. I'll come back to the first sentence in a second. And then there's 5 options that you, the student, would have to choose one of, and this is what David's going to do and how the scene's going to play forward. And you'll notice there's the decision or the action that he decides to take is in bold, and then the text that follows is conflict and what's going to happen in the scene. And the reason for these situations and the conflict is to make these exercises as frictionless as possible. So when you start, you know you've got David, you know he's 32 years old, you know he's in the bank, you know that the static is flickering across camera 3, and the first sentence is just a suggestion. When I did this exercise, I omitted the coffee growing cold, and then you've got these 5 options. So option 1, his course of action is to call the police immediately, and if he got through to the police and the police said, yeah, we're sending a car, the scene's done. But the bank phones are all dead, and he tries his cell phone, no reception. So you've got conflict built in to that scenario. Second option, David grabs a flashlight and goes to check the back door himself. When he gets there, he finds the door is slightly ajar. So you've got mystery, you've got what does he do when he finds the door ajar. Third option, calls his supervisor for advice, but he gets a recording saying the number is disconnected. Fourth option, he decides to leave immediately. When he tries the front door, keycard won't work in the electronic lock. And the last one, this is the one I used when I tried this exercise out. He tries to fix the camera system, but when he opens the security panel, he sees the wires have been deliberately cut. So what you would do is, if you've got these, or you've got an exercise like this is, as I say, just an example. You read the top part of the exercise up until where it says choose one option, write 200 to 250 words, and then that gives you the setup, and then you read the numbered options 1 to 5. You choose one, you start writing. The first sentence is there if you want to take it as is, so you're already flowing, and then you just write. Now, my advice would be, as much as possible, just write forwards. Don't go back to correct things. Don't correct grammar. Don't correct spelling mistakes, because you want to get fictional words down on the page, but you also want your subconscious brain to be providing those, and you want to start building that connection between your fingers, however you're writing, and the subconscious part of your brain. So that would be what I would advise. And also the other reason not to edit, 2 other reasons. The first one is the editing process uses a different part of the brain, and so you're constantly switching from the creative part of the brain to the analytical part of the brain. And the second reason is you shouldn't really edit until you've finished, because what you might find is something. So let's say this was part of a story, and we chose, he tries to fix the camera system, blah blah blah, and you write 200 words on that, and let's say it's part of a story. You might find that at the end of the story, that 200 words doesn't fit, and you need to make the story quicker, and you would scratch it out anyway. So you should never really get involved in editing, in my opinion, until you've finished a complete story or a complete, if you're writing long form like a novel, you probably don't want to edit until you've finished the whole thing, but you could do it in sections as you go along. Anyway, there's a learning sequence you can use as well, because every genre has got multiple scene types that you can use for exercises. So you could practice dialogue or action or description, and I'm sure if you're sat there thinking of the genre that you particularly like, you can think of a number of different scenes that you could use for these exercises. So as well as practicing getting fictional words on the page, you also, and remember what I said about practice how you're going to play, you're also practicing to prep for when you write. So if you're a thriller writer, for example, you could practice some thriller dialogue where someone's held up at the point of a gun. You could practice action scenes like a chase or a kidnapping. You could do some description. You could do a cop goes into a setting and he's looking for a kidnap victim, and he's got his gun out, and the thing you see on the TV where they've got the gun out and they're scanning the rooms and stuff. So you could practice all those things where the primary goal is to get fictional words on the page, and a secondary byproduct of that is you're practicing the kind of things that you're going to write. So that is a great use of these exercises. You practice lots of different things. You don't just practice the same kind of exercise. When you get comfortable with getting 150 or 200 words on the page, you can make the prompts more sophisticated, and the word count can go up to 400 words, 350 to 400 words. When you get to 500 words or so, a short story, 2,500 words, could be created by putting 500 word scenes together. So you can then, the student will then start seeing how a complete story is written in sections, and obviously you could work on transitions between sections, all that kind of stuff. But you can use these exercises as part of a detailed learning sequence to take, if you're an aspiring fiction writer who struggles with this, to take you from getting through the overwhelm of sitting in front of a piece of paper and getting fictional words on that piece of paper. A quick note about the learning goal of what we're talking about. The goal of the exercise isn't to produce high quality writing with the first attempts. It's to get aspiring writers used to putting fictional words on the page in a way that mirrors the kind of writing that you would do when you're actually writing stories. This is a facet of deliberate practice called deliberate play. You won't find much about this in the deliberate play literature that's out there. I'm writing, as well as doing a series of these prompts in the Writing Vault for students, I'm writing a series of articles on deliberate practice. First one hopefully is going tomorrow. Today is, I don't have my phone, it's charging. I think it's the 12th of August. Anyway, it's whatever date's on the published date of this video. I think the first one of the deliberate practice articles will go into the vault tomorrow, but I'm planning to do one of these style of prompts every day for my existing students. So if you'd like to get a series of these and not have to think about putting them together, but just do the exercise, then you might want to check that out. We'll talk about that in a moment. It's also a great way to warm up the writing brain before you actually start writing. You could take one of these, do it, and then go, right, okay, now I'm going to do some writing. So lots of you, and there are more advanced uses of this that I won't go into here, but being able to do these kind of exercises without any friction and just sitting down and doing them is a great way that will help your writing in the weeks, months and years to come. Okay, closing out. As I've said, I'll be creating one of these prompts a day, exercise prompts in the Writing Vault. And if that's something you think, yeah, I can do one of these a day will really help my writing, maybe worth checking that out. Talk about that more in a moment. You can create your own prompts too. I've given you an idea of how you can do it, shown you a prompt. You can always go back to that screen and have a look at the kind of prompt, exercise prompt that I used. So you could create your own too. Totally up to you. I'm completely easy either way. If you've got questions on this, you can email me at paul@deliberate-practice.com. And the Writing Vault, where I'll be creating a series of these prompts, hopefully one a day for the next year would be the goal, but we'll see. But the Writing Vault can be accessed, or you can find details about it at the URL you can see in front of you. There's a link in the description below as well. You can click and go straight along. So do go and check that out and see if it's for you. At this point in time, there is only one prompt in the Writing Vault, the one that you've already seen, and I did it, and so you can see what my attempt was. I'll be doing another one today, and then from tomorrow there'll be at least one a day. Some days there might be 2 or 3. It depends on the feedback I get from the people who are already in the vault. So if that is something you think sounds cool, you can check it out, and I'm just about to make it really seamless to check it out. Anyway, if you've got questions on that, you can use the email address and send me an email and ask the questions. Thank you for taking your time out of your day to watch this. It's something I've not seen many people write about, for especially beginner writers, and especially beginner writers who are adults. And the difference, when I started when I was a child, I didn't know what I didn't know and just blithely carried on, and that created a fictional muscle in my brain. This is another way that you can create your own fictional muscle. So hopefully that will be of use for you. I'll catch you in the next video.